Have you ever wondered why some men try endlessly to impress a woman, yet receive indifference, while another man says little, does less, and somehow earns instant respect? The problem is not attraction. The problem is perception of power. Let us begin with a truth most men are never taught, yet repeatedly punished for ignoring. Respect is not a reward for kindness alone. It is not granted because you are agreeable, available, or endlessly accommodating. Respect emerges from perception, specifically the perception of power. And power, in human psychology, is rarely loud. It is felt. Many men believe that pleasing behavior creates admiration. They think that constant compliments, immediate replies, excessive reassurance, and unwavering agreement will make a woman value them more. But something strange happens instead. The more they try to prove their worth, the less weight their presence carries. Their effort becomes invisible. Their attention becomes invisible. Their attention becomes expected, rather than appreciated, becomes invisible. Their attention becomes expected rather than appreciated, because when a man constantly seeks approval, he unconsciously seeks approval. He unconsciously communicates dependence. Every attempt to impress sends a subtle message. Your opinion determines my value, and the moment value depends on another person's validation, authority shifts away from him. Machiavellian thinking understands human nature without illusion. People instinctively respect those who appear self-contained, individuals who behave as though their identity is already secure. A man who does not chase approval seems powerful because he demonstrates approval, seems powerful because he demonstrates emotional independence. He is not negotiating for acceptance. He assumes his place naturally. Observe how perception changes when a man stops over-explaining himself. When he no longer rushes to justify every decision or defend every opinion, something psychological occurs. Silence creates gravity. Others begin to lean in, trying to understand him rather than evaluate him. The absence of need becomes a form of influence. Pleasing behavior, though well-intentioned. Pleasing behavior, though well-intentioned, often removes mystery and authority. When you agree with everything, adapt to every preference, and prioritize another person's comfort above your own direction, you unknowingly lower your perceived status, not because kindness is weak, but because excessive accommodation signals fear of disapproval. Humans instinctively respect those who can risk disapproval. Consider the difference between a man who changes his opinions to maintain harmony and one who calmly holds his ground without hostility. The second man does not argue aggressively. He simply remains unmoved. His certainty creates stability, and stability is interpreted as strength. Perceived power is built through emotional self-possession. It is the ability to remain composed without seeking reassurance. It is speaking when necessary and remaining silent when words would only serve to impress. It is choosing authenticity over performance. It is choosing authenticity over performance. When a man performs for acceptance, he becomes predictable. When he acts from internal certainty, he becomes compelling. A woman, like all people, unconsciously evaluates whether a man leads his own emotional world or reacts to hers. If his mood rises and falls based on her responses, respect diminishes because influence clearly belongs elsewhere. Reacts to hers. If his mood rises and falls based on her responses, but when his emotional state remains grounded, regardless of external validation, he appears anchored, and anchoring signals leadership. Anchoring signals leadership. This does not mean becoming cold or distant. It means removing desperation from interaction. And warmth combined with self-respect creates magnetism. Warmth combined with neediness creates imbalancism. Power. Power, in this context, is not dominance or control over another person. It is mastery over oneself. The man who governs his reactions, values his time, and does not compete for approval projects, an invisible authority that cannot be imitated through words alone. Notice how quickly dynamics change. When effort is replaced with intention, instead of trying to be liked, he focuses on being genuine. Instead of persuading others of his worth, he behaves as though worth is already established. His presence becomes selective rather than constant, deliberate rather than reactive, and perception follows behavior. There is a principle older than romance, older than politics, older even than civilization itself. What is easily obtained is rarely treasured. Human beings do not measure value by what is freely available. They measure value by what is freely available. They measure value by what feels limited, intentional, and selective. Scarcity transforms ordinary things into desirable ones. And nowhere is this psychological law more powerful than in human attention. Most men unknowingly destroy their own perceived value by offering unlimited access to themselves. Instant replies at every hour, endless availability, constant reassurance. They believe consistency alone builds respect. Yet excess availability sends a silent signal. My time has little demand, and when time appears abundant, its worth declines. Machiavelli understood that perception governs reality. Understood that perception governs reality. A prince who made himself too accessible lost authority because familiarity erased distance. The same law applies in personal dynamics. When someone knows they can reach you whenever they wish, with no uncertainty, no boundaries and no cost, your presence becomes predictable, and predictability weakens intrigue. Scarcity does not mean manipulation. It means structure. It means your attention is guided by priorities rather than impulses. Imagine two men. One rearranges his schedule instantly whenever a woman calls. The other considers his commitments first, responding when he genuinely has space. The first man communicates eagerness. The second communicates purpose. One appears to orbit around her world, while the other invites her into a life already moving forward. Respect follows the second man, because scarcity suggests value already exists elsewhere. Human psychology is deeply influenced by anticipation. When responses are immediate and constant, there is no emotional tension, no curiosity, no moment of wondering. But when interaction contains rhythm, moments of presence followed by absence, attention sharpens. The mind begins to invest energy, to think, to anticipate. Scarcity creates emotional participation. This is why over-communication often weakens attraction. Words lose impact when repeated excessively. Compliments lose meaning when given endlessly. Even affection, when constant and effortless, becomes background noise rather than emotional signal. Even affection, when constant and effortless, becomes background noise. Consider how differently people treat something they might lose. The possibility of absence creates awareness. Awareness creates appreciation. Scarcity awakens perception. A man who values his time naturally creates scarcity without effort. He does not disappear to provoke reaction. He simply refuses to abandon his priorities. For constant interaction, his life contains goals, responsibilities, and personal direction that exist independent of any single relationship. This independence makes his attention feel chosen rather than automatic, and chosen attention carries weight. Scarcity also communicates emotional control. When a man does not rush to respond, to every emotional shift. He demonstrates stability. He is present because he decides to be, not because he feels compelled to maintain approval. This subtle distinction changes how he is perceived. He becomes someone whose engagement is meaningful rather than guaranteed. People instinctively respect what must be earned, not through games or calculated distance, but through natural selectiveness. When access to you reflects intention instead of availability, interaction becomes valuable. Notice how authority figures rarely chase attention. Attention moves toward them. Their presence feels important because it is limited. The same psychological framework applies socially. When you are constantly present, your absence means nothing. When your presence is intentional, it becomes noticed. Scarcity reshapes emotional dynamics by shifting focus away from seeking validation and toward living a structured life. The man who understands this does not withdraw affection. He delivers it with awareness. He speaks when he has something to say. He shows interest without surrendering his rhythm. He allows space to exist, and in that space, curiosity grows. Value is rarely announced. It is inferred from behavior. And behavior that reflects selectiveness signals self-respect. The less desperately attention is offered, the more meaningful it becomes when given. Power is rarely revealed in moments of comfort. It is revealed in moments of pressure. Anyone can appear confident when circumstances are easy, when conversations are pleasant, when admiration flows without resistance. But respect is not formed in calm waters. It is formed when tension appears and a man chooses mastery over reaction. Emotional discipline. Emotional discipline is the silent language of strength. Most men believe strength means dominance through words, louder arguments, or forceful expressions of emotion. They assume that reacting quickly proves confidence. Yet the opposite is often true. Immediate emotional reactions reveal vulnerability because they show that external events can control internal stability. When a man loses composure under pressure, he unknowingly hands authority to the situation or to the person provoking him. His emotions become predictable buttons others can press, and once someone realizes they can control your emotional state, respect begins to erode. Machiavellian wisdom teaches that control over oneself is the highest form of power. A ruler who reacts impulsively becomes easy to manipulate. A ruler who observes calmly becomes impossible to destabilize. The same principle governs personal relationships. Imagine a moment of disagreement. Words sharpen, tone shifts. Many men rush to defend themselves, explain excessively, or match emotional intensity. Their focus becomes winning the moment rather than maintaining composure. But emotional escalation rarely earns respect. It signals insecurity disguised as passion. Now imagine the opposite. The same tension appears, yet the man remains calm. His voice does not rise. His expressions remain measured. He listens without urgency to correct or dominate. His stillness without urgency to correct or dominate. His stillness changes the emotional atmosphere. Entirely. Calmness under pressure communicates something primal. This person is grounded, stable, and difficult to shake. Humans instinctively trust emotional stability because it suggests reliability. A person who controls his reactions appears capable of handling challenges, uncertainty, and conflict without collapse. Respect grows because stability feels safe and powerful at the same time. Emotional discipline is not emotional suppression. It is awareness. It is the ability to feel emotion without becoming ruled by it. Anger may arise, frustration may appear, disappointment may exist, but disciplined individuals choose timing may exist. But disciplined individuals choose timing and expression rather than surrendering to impulse. Consider how silence functions in moments of tension. Silence unsettles emotional chaos because it refuses to participate in it. When others expect reaction and receive calm observation, instead, dynamics shift. And dynamics shift. The emotional storm loses energy. Authority naturally moves toward the person who remains centered. Many tests of respect occur subtly. A teasing remark, a delayed reply, a disagreement framed emotionally rather than logically. A disagreement framed emotionally rather than logically. These moments are rarely conscious challenges. Yet they reveal how a man handles discomfort. Reactivity communicates need for control. Composure communicates control already exists. Emotional discipline. Emotional discipline also protects dignity. Words spoken in emotional impulse often create regret because they reveal more vulnerability than intention. A disciplined man understands that restraint preserves mystery and self-respect. He chooses responses that align with long-term perception rather than short-term emotional relief. This restraint creates psychological contrast. While others fluctuate emotionally, he remains steady. While others rush to resolve tension, immediately he allows clarity to emerge naturally. His calmness becomes influence, shaping interaction. Without force, there is also an element of unpredictability within emotional discipline. When reactions are measured rather than automatic, people cannot easily anticipate emotional outcomes. This unpredictability increases respect because it removes the illusion of control. Others might feel over him. A man governed by emotion appears reactive to circumstances. A man governing emotion appears larger than circumstances. The difference is subtle, yet powerful. One is pulled by events. The other stands firm, regardless of them. Over time, emotional discipline builds a reputation without words. Others begin to perceive him as someone who cannot be easily provoked, pressured, or emotionally cornered. His presence alone alters how conversations unfold, because people instinctively adjust to stability. Strength, then, is not the absence of emotion, but the mastery of its expression. The calm face during chaos, the measured response during conflict, the patience to observe before acting. These behaviors signal internal order, and internal order commands respect long before any achievement or status is revealed. There is a defining difference between a man who is respected and a man who is respected and a man who is merely liked. One lives directed by purpose, the other lives directed by approval. And human nature, whether consciously understood or not, instinctively recognizes this difference within moments. A man without purpose searches for validation because he needs confirmation that he matters. His decisions subtly revolve around reactions. What will impress? What will avoid conflict? 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 His energy flows outward, constantly measuring himself through the eyes of others. And when validation becomes the compass, identity becomes the compass. Identity becomes unstable, shifting according to whoever stands in front of him. But a man guided by purpose operates differently. His direction exists before any interaction begins. Their distraction exists before any interaction begins. His goals, ambitions, and personal standards form an internal structure that does not change simply to maintain comfort or approval. This creates something powerful: independence of identity. Machiavellian philosophy recognizes that people respect those who appear governed by something greater than immediate emotion or social acceptance. A ruler devoted to a vision commands loyalty because he cannot be easily swayed. Likewise, a man devoted to his mission. Becomes psychologically grounded. His time gains value because it is already claimed by intention. When purpose leads, behavior changes naturally. He does not abandon responsibilities to chase attention. When purpose leads, behavior changes naturally. He does not abandon responsibilities to chase attention. He does not reshape opinions to avoid disagreement. His actions align with long-term direction, rather than short-term emotional reward. And this alignment signals strength, without the need for declaration. Validation-seeking behavior often hides behind kindness. Behind kindness, a man may believe he is being supportive, attentive, or generous. Yet underneath lies fear. Fear of losing interest. Fear of losing interest. Fear of disapproval. Fear of being replaced. These fears subtly influence choices, making him overly accommodating. Over time, others sense this emotional dependency, and respect weakens, because dependency suggests imbalance. Purpose eliminates this imbalance. Purpose eliminates this imbalance. When a man values his mission, attention becomes intentional rather than desperate. He spends time because he chooses to, not because he needs reassurance. Conversations feel different because they are not negotiations for approval. Presence. He feels calm, grounded, and self-assured. There is also an undeniable attraction to forward motion. Humans are drawn toward individuals who are building something, whether it is a career, a vision, a craft, or personal mastery. Progress creates momentum, and momentum creates psychological gravity. Others feel they are stepping into a life already unfolding, rather than becoming responsible for giving it meaning. A man centered on validation asks silently, "Do you like me?" A man centered on validation asks silently, "Do you like me?" A man centered on purpose communicates silently, "This is where I am going." And direction inspires respect because it suggests leadership over one's own life. Purpose also protects emotional independence. When rejection or disagreement occurs, it does not shatter identity because identity is rooted elsewhere. Setbacks become events, rather than definitions. Setbacks become events, rather than definitions. This emotional resilience signals maturity, and maturity naturally commands respect. Notice how interactions shift when a man is not constantly available, not because he is playing games, but because his time is invested in growth. Work, learning, physical discipline, creative pursuits. These commitments create boundaries organically. His absence is not withdrawal, it is engagement with a larger vision. This transforms perception. Attention from him feels earned, because it competes with meaningful priorities. His focus carries weight, because it is selective. Others recognize that being included in his time is a privilege, not an obligation. Purpose also sharpens communication. A man who knows where he is going speaks with clarity, because he is not trying to become everything for everyone. He expresses preferences without apology. He declines invitations without guilt. His decisions appear decisive, because they originate from alignment rather than hesitation. Validation seeks comfort. Purpose seeks growth, and growth often requires discomfort. Purpose seeks growth, and growth often requires discomfort. Saying no, maintaining boundaries, choosing discipline over immediate pleasure. These choices signal internal authority. They demonstrate that emotions do not dictate direction. Values do. When a man consistently chooses purpose over approval, he becomes psychologically difficult to influence through praise or criticism. Compliments do not inflate him, and disapproval does not collapse him. and disapproval does not collapse him. This emotional neutrality creates stability, and stability commands respect long before attraction or admiration fully forms. Purpose reshapes presence itself. The way he walks, speaks, listens, and decides reflects someone moving towards something meaningful. Others sense that his life does not pause waiting for validation, and that realization alone changes how he is perceived. Now you understand what most men never realize. Respect is not created by effort alone, nor by charm, nor by endless demonstrations of affection. It is shaped quietly through perception, through behavior, through the invisible signals a man sends long before words are judged. Respect begins when a man stops performing for approval and starts standing firmly within his own identity, when he no longer tries to convince others of his worth. His presence gains weight. Silence replaces over-explanation. Silence replaces over-explanation. Certainty replaces persuasion. Scarcity replaces persuasion. Scarcity gives meaning to his attention, because what is not constantly available becomes consciously valued. His time is no longer something offered freely to avoid loss, but something shared with intention. And intention transforms interaction into significance. Emotional discipline reveals the deepest form of strength. Mastery over reaction. While others are moved by MPIs, he remains steady. While tension rises, he remains composed. In that calmness, people sense stability. And stability naturally draws respect. And above all, purpose becomes his anchor. A man moving toward a vision cannot be easily shaken by approval or rejection. His direction exists beyond temporary emotions, beyond fleeting opinions. He does not chase validation, because his life already possesses meaning. Because his life already possesses meaning. This is the paradox of respect. The moment you stop trying to force it, you begin to embody the qualities that create it. People respond not to what you claim, but to what your behavior consistently communicates. Respect is a silent agreement formed in the minds of others. An acknowledgement that this man governs himself, values his time, governs himself, values his time, controls his emotions, and walks a path that does not depend on permission. When these principles align, respect does not need to be demanded, negotiated, or requested. It appears naturally, almost instantly, because the world mirrors the way a man carries himself.